Tensions that began across the Gulf have rippled outward and, in the past week, produced a decision in Islamabad that could change the map of regional trade as well as the politics of mediation. On April 25, Pakistan's Commerce Ministry put into force a new statutory order, the Transit of Goods Through Territory of Pakistan Order 2026, formally opening designated overland corridors that allow Iran and third countries to move cargo through Pakistani ports and across Balochistan to Iran's borders. At first glance, it is an economic move. At its core, it promises faster cargo movement, reduced paperwork, and the elevation of ports such as Gwadar and Karachi into broader regional transit hubs. But at this moment, with diplomacy precarious and the United States and the Iran locked in a tense ceasefire and legal argumentation over the origins of the fighting, that same order reads as a geopolitical signal. The new framework designates 6 principal routes across southern Pakistan, linking CN principal routes across southern Pakistan, linking CN Chars. Gateways to frontier crossings, ports and coastal terminals, Karachi and Port Qasim in Sindh, and Gwadar on the Balochistan coast are now officially connected via inland corridors through Umara, Pasni Layari, Kusdag, Dalbandan, Taftan, and the Gabd crossing. Other passages run through Turbat, Hosha, Panjur, Nokundi, and Quetta, knitting together a network that can carry containerized trade from ships off the Arabian Sea directly to Iran's border points. The routes come with a single, stark condition. Consignments destined for Iran or transiting to it from third countries must be backed by an encashable bank guarantee equivalent to Pakistan's import duties, a customs safeguard designed to keep transit flows regular and revenue assured. Pakistan's announcement followed high-level diplomacy on its soil. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Islamabad in late April for consultative talks with Pakistan's leadership as mediators pressed to revive what had been a fragile pause in hostilities. Araghchi's itinerary included meetings with the country's prime minister and with the military leadership. Within days of touching down, he moved on to other regional stops, underscoring how quickly the shuttle diplomacy has moved. Commenting on his trip, Araghchi described it as a productive engagement, and when asked about whether Washington's approach signaled seriousness, he summed it up plainly: "We have yet to see." Those few words, simple, skeptical, cut to the heart of the current diplomatic dynamic. For weeks, intermediaries have been shuttling between capitals. Pakistan has emerged as a central conduit, physically and politically, for talks meant to stabilize a violent flare that has already rerouted shipping and disrupted supply chains. The new transit order is both a practical response to that disruption and an assertion of leverage. With parts of the Strait of Hormuz effectively constrained and maritime routes under strain, land corridors are more than an option, they become a lifeline. Trade experts say the timing matters as much as the text. Analysts in Karachi and Islamabad point to thousands of containers now stored at Pakistani ports after Tehran's partial blockade of certain vessels in the Gulf and after a sharp retrenchment of maritime traffic. Industry sources estimate that more than 3,000 containers destined for Iran have been held up at Karachi alone, unable to reach Iranian seaports because shipping lines and insurance regimes have recalibrated their risk assessments since February's strikes and the subsequent escalation. By allowing those boxes to be restuffed, regorged, and sent overland under regulated customs rules, Islamabad is offering a rapid alternative to the long, vulnerable voyage around contested waters. Local commerce leaders have been explicit about the economic logic. Tariq Rangunwala said, "Already this route is being used for exports from Pakistan to Uzbekistan and Tajikistan as an A. 38 to the Kunjarab route in the north, and we hope to see this remain an ongoing feature as geopolitical tensions reshape global supply chains." The quotation is awkwardly phrased, and it echoes the rough practical tone of regional interlocutors. But the substance is clear. Corridors through southern Pakistan are not a short-term workaround. They are built atop existing investments, including the growing footprint of Gwadar Port and the old but now reactivated border crossing near Gwadar that sits roughly 75.5 kilometers from the port. For many traders, the routes already work. The new order simply gives them legal permanence and a customs framework to match. There are immediate commercial upsides. Shipping companies facing rerouted schedules can shorten transit times, exporters can diversify corridors, and Pakistan, along the geographical conduit between South Asia and Central Asia, gets a fresh shot at becoming a logistics hub. There are immediate political consequences as well. Any expansion of trade flow to Iran will be watched closely by Washington, where the calculus is not purely economic. The United States has sought to isolate Tehran economically as part of a broader pressure strategy. Pakistan's permission to transit goods, even under customs guarantee requirements, shifts the balance of leverage in small but important ways. Those shifts intersect awkwardly with the politics of mediation. Earlier this month, the United States dispatched a high-level delegation to Islamabad, a negotiating team that has included Vice President J.D. Vance in prior rounds, alongside the president's close aides and special envoys. For the latest push, the White House had planned to send two trusted intermediaries, Jared Kushner, a senior presidential advisor and the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, the White House's special envoy for peace missions. Both men have been central to the American diplomatic effort to find a way out of the confrontation. So, plans were suddenly altered. President Donald Trump abruptly called off the trip for Kushner and Witkoff, describing the visit as impractical and criticizing what he characterized as confusion inside Iran's leadership. On social media, he framed the decision in blunt, dismissive language. Donald Trump said, "We have all the cards. They have none." A short time later, he added another stark sentence. Donald Trump said, "They can call us anytime they want." Those lines, delivered in quick succession, crystallized a broader ambiguity. The president insisted that cancelling the envoys' travel did not mean a turn toward further military escalation, but he offered no clear roadmap for moving forward, other than a continued reliance on the leverage he says Washington holds. Complicating that rhetoric was an internal policy document from the State Department's legal office that landed in Washington's debate over the legitimacy of force. The department's legal advisor, Reed D. Rubenstein, sued a memorandum explaining the administration's legal rationale for the strikes launched on February 28. The memo's language was direct. Reed D. Rubenstein said, "The United States is engaged in this conflict at the request of and in the collective self-defense of its Israeli ally, as well as in the exercise of the United States' own inherent right of self-defense. The formulation matters not because it is purely legalese, but because it offers a blunt framing for the United States' role. An allied collective engagement rather than a unilateral preventive operation." That line has been seized upon by critics who say it contradicts public claims that the administration acted independently, and by supporters who say it anchors the campaign within the norms of collective security. Tehran's response has been to sharpen its rhetoric even as it sits at the table through intermediaries. Iran's defense ministry, speaking through state outlets, framed Washington's posture not as legitimate. Prudence, but as an attempt to engineer a face-saving exit from a war, Tehran insists it did not start. Iran's defense ministry said, "Our military power today is a dominant force, and the enemy is looking for a face-saving way to escape the war quagmire it has become trapped in." That language was meant to signal confidence and resolve. Even while Tehran engages in indirect diplomacy through countries like Pakistan and Oman, the choreography of travel has become a telling metric of seriousness. Abbas Araghchi arrived in Islamabad for talks and left for Muscat and then to Russia in quick succession. He praised Pakistan's mediation but left open questions about whether Washington would match Pakistan's urgency with clear concessions. Abbas Araghchi said, "We have yet to see." The US Araghchi said, "We have yet to see." Envoys, for their part, found their briefing schedule altered by the president's decision not to send them, a development that Pakistani officials portrayed as a pause rather than a breakdown. Islamabad has repeatedly positioned itself as a neutral platform where both sides can test ideas without immediate risk of escalation. That role has thrust the Pakistani Prime Minister and the country's military leadership, including Field Marshal Asim Munir, who has been elevated to an unusually prominent regional role, into the center of a dangerous mediation effort. For Washington, the calculus is fraught. President Trump's abrupt public messaging, part bravado and part tactical posture, left room for multiple readings. An administration trying to maintain pressure while keeping diplomatic options open, a leader impatient with the pace of shuttle diplomacy, a commander-in-chief who sees leverage in the uncertainty itself. For Tehran, The same mix of signals reads as an opportunity to test whether US resolve is iron or brittle. For Islamabad, it is an opening to assert influence and to create economic advantage, even at the risk of annoying a powerful partner. The legal memo released by the State Department has intensified the debate at home and abroad. Legal scholars and foreign policy experts have asked whether the memo's invocation of collective self-defense fully satisfies international law's usual strictures. Critics say the document stretches familiar concepts. Supporters say it is consistent with long-standing interpretations when an ally's survival is at stake. That argument will almost certainly wind its way through international legal forums and legislative halls as the White House seeks, by May 1, either congressional support for continuing the use of force or some other legal pathway to sustain the campaign. Back in Pakistan, business voices see a different ledger. The transit order offers revenue and jobs. It also provides a strategic pivot towards Central and West Asian markets that have long been more accessible by land through northern routes or by deep-sea options that some countries invested in precisely to avoid Pakistan. India's investment in Chak, Sabah, for example, historically offered Tehran an alternative channel. Now, with seaborne access constrained, Pakistan's southern network suddenly looks like a coastal complement rather than a rival. But economic gains will not inoculate Islamabad from diplomatic fallout. Washington will watch closely how guarantees are exercised, whether the transit corridors are used strictly for commercial consignments, and whether sanctions compliance and financial controls are enforced. Pakistan's insistence on incashable bank guarantees is an attempt to neutralize many of those concerns, a bureaucratic lever meant to ensure customs duties and to discourage illicit diversion. Yet guarantees do not erase politics. Every truck that moves toward Taftan or Gabd will carry a secondary freight, a message about which paths remain open in a region where access is increasingly political. The interplay between commerce and security is the defining feature of this moment. Pakistan's corridors offer a priere, tactical fix to a supply chain choke point. They also realign incentives. Countries that were once dependent on one maritime lane now have a land alternative that, if it grows into a durable corridor, could reroute trade maps for years to come. But that structural shift could outlast today's ceasefire and reshape relationships between South Asia, Central Asia, and the Persian Gulf. Diplomatically, the move leaves many questions unresolved. Who benefits most from these corridors in the long term? Will economic ties soften political frictions, or will trade become another channel of contestation in a broader regional rivalry? Will Washington attempt to pressure Islamabad to limit or condition transit flows in ways that could strain the partnership between the two countries? For now, the answer is unclear. The immediate scene is one of careful hedging. Pakistan says it is facilitating mediation. Iran says it will engage through intermediaries. The United States toggles between negotiation, leg, justification, and public bluster. Each side is testing the edges of leverage and measure. There is, finally, a human dimension. Port workers, truck drivers, customs officials, and small traders are part of this negotiation by default. If transit ramps up, some will see opportunity. If politics turns sour, they will be on the front lines of disruption. For policymakers, the calculus should be straightforward. Economic openings can lower the temperature only if they are embedded in reliable rules, transparent oversight, and steady, not episodic diplomacy. For now, those pieces are only partly in place. The last weeks have shown just how quickly diplomatic choreography can change. Halls in Islamabad have hosted envoys in the morning and seen them depart for other capitals by night. Written memoranda in Washington have been interpreted as both legal shield and policy statement. In that swirl, Pakistan's transit order is more than a bureaucratic measure. It is a wager that markets why. They'll value new roadways, that mediation will continue, and that a country perched between maritime and overland routes can convert between maritime and overland routes can convert geography into influence. Whether that wager pays off depends on choices Washington and Tehran make next, and on how Islamabad manages its new status as both a broker and a trade conduit. For now, the door to diplomacy remains open but uncertain. Messages are being sent, sometimes bluntly, sometimes cryptically, and the region waits to see which direction the next convoy will take. Toward commerce, away from confrontation, or into a new kind of standoff where borders and shipping lanes do the talking.